Hello, Algebra 1. Today we're going to be looking at multiplying binomials. If you remember what a binomial was, it's a polynomial with exactly two terms. And so we're going to be learning two different ways of how to multiply binomials. We're going to first start off with some warm-up questions. So looking at number 1, this is something we've been doing before. And the way we've done it is we've been creating this rectangle, right? And we would normally put 2x plus 1 on the top. We would put 5 here on the bottom, and then we would just carefully multiply this out, right? So 5 times 2x gives me 10x, 5 times 1 gives me 5, and so our final answer would just be what's inside our rectangular box, and we'd get 10x plus 5. Another way we can do this is we can use distributive property, right? Where you're going to take 5 and multiply by 2x, that gives me 10x. I'm going to take 5, I'm going to multiply it to the 1, and that gives me positive 5. In the end, you get the same answer regardless, but I want to just make sure you're clear with the two different methods, right, as we move forward, okay? Now, looking at number 2, I want you to try this on your own. When your video says your turn, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to work this out, and when you're done, press play. So here we're going to create a rectangle. I'm going to put 2x plus 1 on top, x on the side. 2x times x gives me 2x squared. X times 1 gives me x. At this point, I would write down what's inside my box. Now, these are not like terms, and so at this point, this is your final answer. If you did the distributive property, right, you did x times 2x, which gives me 2x squared. X times 1 gives me x, and you'd have got the same answer, right? So either method is fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to be looking at how to multiply binomials, right? Here we have two terms multiplied by two terms. And so I'm going to show you two different ways of doing this. So this first method, we're going to create a Punnett Square. And so what that's going to look like, it's going to be a square broken up into 4 compartments. I'm going to put 3x minus 5 on the top. And I'm going to put 2x plus 2 along the side. So essentially, it's like the same thing we did before, except now we just have an extra row. I'm going to carefully multiply this out. 2x times 3x gives me 6x squared. 2x times negative 5 gives me negative 10x. 2 times 3x gives me 6x. 2 times negative 5 gives me negative 10. From here, I will just write down the terms inside my Punnett square. 6x squared minus 10x plus 6x minus 10, and then from here I would just simplify. So 6x squared, there's no other like terms for that. Here I have negative 10x plus 6x. When I combine those, I'm going to have negative 4x, and then lastly minus 10, and this would be my final answer. So the next method we're going to look at is a method called FOIL, which a lot of you guys might have heard of before. F stands for first, O stands for outer, I stands for inner, and L stands for last. And I'll explain what these words mean as we multiply a binomial with another binomial. So the first word here, right, is first, and all that means is we're going to multiply the first term of each binomial. So in this case, 3x is the first term of that binomial, 2x is the first term of the second binomial. We're going to multiply the first terms of each binomial. 3x times 2x gives me 6x squared. Now from here, we're going to move on to the next letter, which is O, which stands for outer. And what that means is we're going to be multiplying the two terms that are on the outermost edge. In this case, it would be 3x times 2, right? Those are the terms on the outside. When you multiply that together, you should get positive 6x. After O, we're going to move on to the I, which stands for inner. And what that means is we're going to multiply the two terms that are toward the inside, right? The innermost terms. Negative 5 times 2x will give me negative 10x. And then finally, we're at L, which is last. And what we're going to do there is we're going to multiply the last terms of each binomial. So negative 5 times positive 2 gives me negative 10. And then from here, we're going to just carefully combine like terms. 6x squared, right, is alone. I can combine 6x minus 10x. Those are my like terms. I get negative 4x. And then the minus 10 stays as is. And this is your final answer, right? So these are the two different methods that we can use when we're multiplying binomials out. We can either create a Punnett square, or we can use the FOIL method. So at this time, I'm going to ask you to pause the video and try number 4 on your own. So for number 4, I'm going to do this in two methods. I'm going to first create the Punnett square. I'm going to put x minus 1 here on top. I'm going to put 5x minus 4 here on the bottom, on the side. And then here we're going to multiply 5x and x, which gives me 5x squared. 5x times negative 1 gives me negative 5x. Negative 4 times x gives me negative 4x. And then negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. One thing to note, I know that eventually I'm going to combine these, right? Those are my like terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just skip a step. I'm going to first write 5x squared because there's no other like term, right? There's no other x squared term. Now when I combine negative 4x and negative 5x, I get negative 9x. All right, so again, hopefully you can see where I got that negative 9x term. And then that plus 4 in the very bottom right box stays the same. If you got this right, very good job. If you made any mistakes with those positives or negatives or with multiplying it out, again, just learn from your mistakes moving forward. Now, if you did the FOIL method, I want to go over that too, just so we can see how we did it with the FOIL method. So here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the first, right? So we're going to multiply the first terms of each binomial. That should have given me 5x squared. Then I'm going to multiply the outer terms, right, which would be x and negative 4. That would give me negative 4x. Then I'm going to multiply the inner terms. That should give me negative 5x. And then I'm going to multiply the last terms out, and that should give me positive 4. Once again, we're going to combine like terms, so the 5x squared, right? There's no other x squared term here. I can totally combine negative 4x minus 5x. That would give me negative 9x, and then the plus 4 stays the same. If you got that right, very good job. At this point, we're going to do one last question here. I want you to use whichever method that you didn't use for problem 4. So creating my Punnett square, I'm going to write 2x minus 3 here. I'm going to put 3x plus 5. And I'm going to carefully multiply 3x and 2x to get 6x squared. 3x times negative 3 gives me negative 9x. 5 times 2x, I get 10x. And then 5 times negative 3 gives me 15. Now I know that these are going to be my like terms that I'm going to combine. So 6x squared stays the same. When I combine 10x minus 9x, I end up with just positive x. And then lastly, I get minus 15. And this would be your final answer. And then we just color this x so you can see where I got that from. If you got that right, very good job. Looking at the FOIL method, I'm going to write down the two binomials here. I'm going to put the letters FOIL just to remember myself what the word is. I'm going to first multiply the first terms of each binomial. That's what the F stands for. The O stands for the outer terms, right, which is 2x times 5. Then I stands for the inner terms, which is negative 9x. And then L stands for the last terms, which is negative 15. And then from here, I'm going to just carefully combine like terms. And you end up with the exact same answer. And so this is how you can multiply one binomial with another binomial, right? You can either use the Punnett square method, right? Or you can use the FOIL method, whichever you like. I would say know both methods. And so when you do your homework, just be very careful. Hopefully you guys are okay with how to multiply binomials. This is the end of today's lesson.